Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the HR Leaders Podcast, the show where we explore the future of work with industry experts and HR executives from the world's leading global brands. Today, we have a special guest on the show. We're joined by Ian Cook, who's the Vice President of People Analytics at Visier. We're going to be talking about how the new SEC disclosure rules impact Chief HR Officers and CFOs. Welcome to the show, Ian. How are you?
I'm doing well, thanks. Thanks for having us on.
Where are you joining us from today?
I am joining you from a cold, wet, grey, claggy would be the word I would use, Vancouver in Canada. Beautifully grey outside.
Exactly the same as the UK then, just the other side of the world.
Exactly. As you can hear the Scottish accent, so it feels just like home.
Yeah. How did you end up over there from Scotland, a long way away from home?
I love to say that I forecast Brexit, but I know that would be a complete lie. I love to ski, and the ski season in Scotland was kind of tailing off, so I decided to try Vancouver. Moved there, found a job, loved it, stayed. Simple story.
Nice. Before we jump into the topic, tell everyone just a little bit more about yourself personally and your journey to where you are now at Visier.
Potted background, started life in the UK in the consulting space, so did a lot of leadership development, HR strategy work, like how does the organization function? And I kept running into what I describe as the CFO problem. Like, you've got a great program idea, you know it's going to work, you know how it can really help people thrive. And then you run to the budget questions like, well, how much is this going to cost? And like, how is this going to work? And this is back in the 90s, way before the understanding of talent and how it makes a difference was more elevated. And so that pushed me back to doing an MBA, because I needed to be able to talk the language of business to have the conversation with the CFO on their level, so we can translate the people and the business elements together. Brought that to Canada. I'm now a serial entrepreneur in the HR space, using data to drive and actually answer those questions. Like, how do people make a difference? So last 8 years being part of Visier, joined as it was an aspiration. And it was a kind of an interesting idea. Have been part of its growth to the position we have in the market today, being the domain expert that's actually built out that content. So I live and breathe people analytics, HR strategy on a daily basis, helping our customers, building our products, and talking to people like yourself.
Amazing. So sounds like you found the right place where you need to be.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I'd probably do this if they didn't pay me. Don't tell them that, but this is genuinely a passion.
Well, it's live on LinkedIn now, and you can't take it back. This topic we're talking about today is one that you brought across to my attention, which was a big surprise that not many people were talking about it. Just share everyone what disclosure rules mean, and first and foremost for organizations and leaders, because there may be some people that aren't aware, as I wasn't, and then we'll kind of go from there.
Yeah, no, it's a pivotal moment. So the SEC is the legal regulatory group in the US that oversees all trading on the stock market. If you are a publicly listed company, you have shares and they are any US stock market, you have a whole set of things that you have to do in order to satisfy the SEC disclosure regulations. And what they're trying to do is create a level playing field. So most people will be familiar with kind of financial statements and financial reporting that happens. They've specified what is revenue, what is costs, so that when people are making trading decisions, somebody's not pretending costs are one thing and revenue is another thing, and that's different. Like the whole Enron debacle is kind of the poster child for that, where the thought of money was actually booked as revenue as opposed to real money. And the SEC is the body that says, no, let's make sure that we're all using good, robust, common information about businesses. There's a reporting framework for that. And that means every investor is playing on a level playing field. They've got the same information. They've got information they can use to make decisions. So when they change rules, it's pretty substantial. Like, missing an SEC disclosure doesn't happen. There's groups and large populations in the business that are designed to understand these reports, build these reports. Like, it's a pretty well-established part of most organizations. It's not always front and center, but it has to be there. And it's the thing that the CEO and the CFO traditionally have been deeply involved in. Like, what are we going to tell the market? When are we telling them? How do we know that's true? All of that stuff is kind of because the SEC has these disclosure rules.
And in the past, from what you told me, they only used to measure, or you only had to include the employee or the organization's headcount, but now they're including measurements in relation to attraction, retention, development of people. Why have they taken this step to change that?
So I'll give if I give a little bit of history, I think it kind of helps position the decision, and then we can kind of frame the decision. Probably going back 3 to 4 years, there's a a range of different stakeholders on the investment side. People like BlackRock, who are big investors, they've been advocating for a long time. Like they understand that people make a difference in business, and so they've been advocating for a long time. So like, we need to understand this. I don't want to make an investment decision purely on the financials, because there's a whole bunch of people stuff going on that could completely mess up my decision. So they've been advocating for a really long time to say, headcount, like what can I tell off headcount? It tells me nothing. Like, kind of bread and butter number. So they've been advocating for a long time to say we need more insight. So that was one group. So they would be putting in from the SEC saying we want reporting on people. They use the frame human capital. I'm not in love with that term, so I'll just refer to people. On the flip side, the SEC then went to the industry bodies and said, we want you to report X, or BlackRock says, or so-and-so says you should report X, Y, Z. And they said, well, that applies, but that doesn't. And so there was this back and forth of trying to create some standardized list. In the end, the SEC, rightly in my mind, said, you know what? People are an absolutely massive part of a business. Like from my past, I walk into an organization, you can sense whether it's going to be successful or not. As soon as you get around the people, you kind of know it. BlackRock want that information, want some way to standardize and see that, so that that's part of their investment decision. So the SEC said, we get it. You need this information. This is part of making a viable investment decision. So we're going to say you have to disclose things. But what they then did was this slight pivot, which says you have to disclose what is material. And again, there's lengthy dissertations of what material means. The simple layperson summary is like, does this affect your business? Do you report it at the management level? Do you report it at the executive level? Is it something about your people that the board pay attention to? If the board pay attention to it, that means they care about it. They care about it because it's going to help or hurt your business. That's the kind of thing that you should be reporting. They announced it in August. It became law on November 9th that you need to disclose more than your headcount. You have to disclose things that are material about your people. That's in the next disclosure. So we're running at that for many people who would report at the end of the year, like a December timeframe, or some folks are December, some folks are January. We're running at that deadline right now. That is, clear and present, to be very obvious about it. So that was the change. It's people are struggling with it, and I get the struggle. There's nobody saying, tell us your turnover number, tell us your change in base pay, tell us this. It's not a prescribed list, which most people are familiar with. It's tell us the things you care about. And that really elevates the need to dig into the challenge.
It's very vague.
Oh, it's beautifully vague.
So how do companies know what they should and shouldn't disclose then? It seems very...
And I think that's another great question. So if you have to think about it as though you are a person investing in the business, which most C-level players should, think about it. If I own shares, again, lots of C-level players own shares. If you own shares, so think about it as though you were a shareholder. What would I want to know about the people? What can I reliably report? What can I report with a minimum of risk? Like, all reporting is about sharing enough that you don't get in trouble, but not sharing too much that you get in trouble. Like, it's a real, that whole game. It's the same on the financial side.
You said that when we were speaking via email as well. You said it's like sometimes like not doing anything is bad, but actually doing too much, or it could be actually even worse. So it's like, where's the middle ground?
Where is the middle ground? So, and I'm going to give you a tangible example, Chris, because I think it's more, it starts to make it real for people. If you look at how the social justice movement has driven this need for more transparency and more action against diversity, and not just, overall we're kind of diverse, but where is the representation of women or people of color or neurodiverse people, all that different spectrum of diverse approaches, and where are they in our business? How many are in leadership roles? How many get promoted? What action are we taking to promote that? So that is one of those places. And if you think about how does that affect my business, I've seen some research from a group called Edelman, who do a trust barometer.
Cool.
They're well known. They've been tracking how does somebody's brand affect purchasing decisions. And so 3 years ago, like 40-ish% of people said, yeah, I'm going to look at whether that brand aligns to my social values. And if it does, I'll buy it. We went over the hump. We actually went to 60% as of 2020. So when 60% of your buying public are looking at your business as saying, do you align to the things I care about? And social justice is like front and center in what people care about. then clearly having a poor social justice record, or not being transparent about diversity, or not having a stated position on diversity, is going to leave you at risk from your purchaser. People are looking at your business and going, I'm not sure if I like you. And again, there's numerous stories. I don't really want to name specific businesses, but there's numerous stories where
you'll know those. We all know.
We know this. Like, CEO gets caught doing XYZ, and they see the material effect on their revenue. If I'm an investor, I want to know that you're on top of those risks. I want to know that you've got a program, a practice that, as the person leading the people side of the business, you've thought about it, you've measured it, you're in it, you can convince me that I can trust you not to have a skeleton in that particular closet. Because those are the things that hurt an investor, because it's a sudden event. The share price has dropped 20% overnight, and they are millions of dollars out of pocket.
So what is the impact or the penalty for companies that don't disclose this information? Have they made that very clear?
They haven't, but I also think that's where really digging in and understanding is important. So I went to our legal guys. We've got a fabulous, he's one of our founders, but he's also our sort of internal counsel. And he's not like many lawyers because he's really pragmatic. So I always appreciate talking to him. And he basically said, what I think they're doing is letting the courts decide how this plays out. Because my example is really clear. What happens is an investment house, a large investor, puts a bunch of money, hundreds of millions of dollars into a stock. An event comes along, that stock gets damaged. If that business hasn't disclosed, and they can prove that you should have known about this, you should have had some information on this, this is something that's material to your business, it should have been in your disclosure, they can then sue. So the investment house sues the company for non-disclosure. The company becomes liable for the loss from trading. So it's not. So what the SEC is doing, it's not actually becoming a policeman. And I think this is where the nuance of how this framework works it's different. We're very used to compliance reporting. I tell you this, if I don't, you fine me. That's a game. But the SEC is actually setting a playing field for this trading game. And so they're not saying, if you don't disclose, we'll fine you. They're saying, if you don't disclose, you've got nothing to share. What they anticipate is that you don't disclose, something goes wrong, an investor loses a ton of money. They go, you should have known about this. This is a material aspect of your business. If you didn't know about it, you're not competent. If you did know about it and didn't tell me, you're liable. And that's where this is super tricky. This is why, again, like yourself, I'm really surprised people aren't talking more about it. A lot of I went out to a whole range of our customers, and again, they're on top of their people data. Many of them been at it for years, like 5, 6, 7 years. They're sort of serial customers with Visier. They'd all been to their SEC reporting groups. They'd elevated to their CHRO. They had started the conversation, not to get the list of what we should report, but to get an understanding of, how are we going to go forward? Because it is like, you definitely don't want to over-report, but you need to report something. And understanding what is like clear, straight, obvious first target is an important place to start with.
And just for anyone and everyone that has a presence in America, if you're a global business, you have a presence there, what are the criteria?
Any organization that has their shares listed on the New York Stock Exchange, basically. Okay. So anybody whose shares are traded in America. So yeah, if you're a global business, if you're listed in London, and you're only listed in London, you're under the UK regulations. If you are listed in New York, so you're on the New York Stock Exchange, your shares are traded, which is, again, vast majority of global businesses would have some portion of their monies there, then you need to get after it.
Well, for your organizations that you're working with, they're kind of a step ahead, right? I work with so many people that always good things to say about Visier, Unilever, Lego, just to name a few, Melissa over at Lego always has good things to say, and and many others. So they're kind of a step ahead. But for others that perhaps aren't a Visier customer or don't have something similar in place, how can they start to get ready and get on top of this challenge?
There's two avenues. I'll describe the first avenue. There's a practice which has led us to this place, and it's called environmental, social, and governance reporting. Many organizations did this voluntarily. So instead of having to tell the SEC because they want us to, a lot of organizations have fired up and said, actually, we want to tell you more, investor. We want to put forward our best face. We know our best face is not just our financial one. It's actually across many different elements. A lot of it came out of the energy industry. The environmental component was a big piece there. So within that social bucket, lots of organizations are already reporting on what are our diversity initiatives. I see a question from somebody in the chat that says, what about learning and development? Exactly right. Like lots of organizations are talking about how do we grow people? Like what's our approach? What opportunities are available to them? What specific programs are in place? Do we have tuition reimbursement? Do we have, open access to any kind of learning? Like how are we building that future workforce? It's a great question because like lots of investors would be wondering like, so you made money pre-COVID, like, are you the right shape? Have you built the right skills? Have you even clocked that post-COVID is a different world and you're moving that way? So learning and development and how what are the actions? What are the processes? Simple measures like how many people are participating in learning in their own right. Those kinds of statements are in the ballpark of where to get started. And so if you wanted to say like, I've got absolutely nothing, oh my goodness, like how do I get started? Go and read some of the ESG reports that are out there. They've got good formatting. They kind of structure the information well. They give you an idea of the things that people are talking about.
Example, yeah, I'm sure. Thanks for the question, by the way, Roy.
I also just, the SEC it's creating a framework. It is not trying to mandate or control,
regulate,
a specific set of actions. It's just saying like we're trying to make sure that the information flow is clear so that there's a level playing field, and they're letting the different participants in that market fight it out. So and again, I think that's where lots of people struggle, and I think it's where the debate becomes difficult. Again, I had a ton of people saying, can you give me the SEC list, Ian? I'm like, I'm sorry, I can't. I would love to. It would be so nice just to go, tell them these 10 things. Like, check, done.
Why haven't they gone that direction? Because they could have still given a guideline and then not regulated it and not, been the organization finding people. So why did they go with the route of just leaving it so vague and so open?
So I have one example of that. And I think they've left it open just a little bit to let the regulation emerge from practice as opposed to trying to mandate and be wrong. But let me give you a simple example, like absence, absence rates, overtime rates, all of that stuff. We have a large number of hourly driven organizations where that overtime number, that absence number, it's kind of what they live and die by. Like, they're running on a 2 or 3% margin business. So for every dollar we make, 3 cents goes to profit. So they run really high volume, really tight, and they pay super attention to those details. So if I want reporting from one of those groups, I want to know their absence number. Like, again, when we go in to talk about the people Alex practice, when we talk to their practitioners, it's like, what does your business really care about? Like, what does the management group pay attention to? It's the absence number. We have software companies who are our customers, and I go, so overtime, what's it like for you? They just laugh because they have no such concept.
It doesn't even apply to them.
It doesn't apply. Like, no, everybody's salaried. Our median pay is close to 6 figures. People just work, and we manage
deliverables, not the time clocked in and clocked out.
We manage to a target. We manage to ship content. We manage to code delivered and all that process. So overtime's irrelevant, and that's kind of where the SEC said, like, we've tried to find this list, and everything we put down, for every 5 people it applies to, there's 5 people it doesn't apply to. And
especially now, right, in this new world of work that we find ourselves in, a lot of those things have gone out the window. That list, half of that list may have been irrelevant if they would have created one.
And so, I think rather than them saying we are the standards body, we know how every single business will always run, we know what is right, and having to kind of fight that battle almost, they actually said, no, like, your business. You should know how people affect your results. And this is where I think, it really kicks in for the CHRO. It's an opportunity. It's a massive opportunity to engage as a peer level with the CFO and the CEO to say, if we're going to persuade the market that our share is going to go up 10%, 20%, whatever story you're telling to the market, we're going to need to prove that we've got the people, the growth in the people, the capacity to manage the costs of people to actually support that story. And so it just, we've always, again, it just means we're automatically a component of that strategic business conversation. And it's not that I think, again, the challenge becomes not so much we don't know what works. It's like, how do we articulate it? How do we make it clear? How do we make it understandable for the rest of the world?
Roy had a pretty good question there as well in the chat. My vision's really bad, Roy, so I have to lean in closer to my computer right now. He said it's pretty smart by the SEC. You don't provide sufficient detail, you can open yourself up to more questions. And if you are unable to provide good answers on the spot, then you lose credibility.
I think it's, again, as you say, Chris, it's an astute observation, because what some of the repercussions of this, and again, I think it's why I wanted to raise people's awareness and think about it, those earnings calls, there's going to be an element of an SEC disclosure that is people-based. And how many CHROs are on earnings calls currently? Like, it's not a common habit. It would be the CEO and the CFO would be, on the phone, explaining their forward guidance, explaining how the business is doing, explaining how that shows up in the math on the finance side. There should be a portion of that that's now about the CHRO, saying, like, here's how we are aligning, building, shaping the capacity of the people that work with us, be it permanent, contingent, whatever, to drive that. Here's the genius who knew how to make this particular product, who we've secured. Like, there's so many, all of us who work on the people side of business know just how deeply people shape the results. And this is just the start of that being a investor level conversation. There's a lot to educate yourself on to be capable and competent in that conversation. And exactly as Roy says, clear, so investors get it. Not so much that you get tripped up, but not so little that you look like you're hiding stuff.
It's a tough balancing act. I think so. Samendra kind of clarified his point earlier. He said for CFOs, showing financial numbers are quite easy, but for CHROs in the new metrics that we were talking about, maybe not so much. That's why you need someone like Visier to help you out, right, Ian?
Two answers: yes, and yes. You need somebody like Visier, and then you also need this group that's called People Analytics. Right, I just have to wave farewell to my son going to school. You also need people who know people analytics to actually do that articulation. Huge component. Huge component of interpretation of the data. And again, like, one of the things that we've seen over the whole development of the people analytics practice, most organizations were, doing it in Excel, doing it by hand. Yes. They'd get the report when they needed it. And so all of the effort went into getting the data. And it was like, it was such a lift, and it was so hard that basically by the time they got the data, it's like, oh, done, go. And again, that's where I think a lot of people are looking for this prescribed list. Like, oh, just make this easy for me. Just tell me the data I need to extract so I can put it in a report so I can send it. And they haven't made it easy. So you need the data, you need it flowing constantly. You need to be able to look at it and look at change, because this isn't about an end of period, here's my number. This is actually about trends. Like, my turnover has gone up, my turnover has gone down, my percentage of women in leadership positions gone up, and it's staying there. Like, so you're actually going to have to look at it over time and interpret the trends and explain what those mean, as opposed to 5 people started in the business last month. And so it's just really, again, that's part of my mission in raising the profile of this, is it's just elevated the level at which we have to practice people analytics, like, literally overnight.
No, it's super important. And I said, I can't believe we're the first time talking about it now. I haven't heard a peep out of anyone talking about it as well, but it definitely has elevated the role of CHRO and the people analytics leaders. So it's a great opportunity, but also we need to make sure, like you just made a good point about what we provide and focusing on, what's important to the business and keeping track of those trends and making sure that that's the data we're sharing. Otherwise, we're going to become lost amongst too many things.
Yeah, and just another piece potentially to help with establish comfort and a kind of a baseline for working. Everybody I've ever talked to in HR gets this. Like, this isn't actually different HR. this is the HR we've always done around, are people engaged? Are people in the jobs they like? Are people exercising their skills in a way that makes them their best? Is management practicing in such a way that we manage all that? What this is doing is articulating that in a way that it tells the rest of the world what it means and how it's working, as opposed to sort of HR for HR. So I've coached a lot of CHROs through this space, and there's that initial like, oh my God, this is this new technology world. I don't get it. It's like, it is, but there's a whole bunch of people who understand that, and you just need to make them work for you.
You don't need to understand the technical. It's the same stuff, and you're getting, yeah, I get it. It's translating it into a different language almost.
It's translating into a different language, finding people to help you with that, like staying true to what you understand the business needs, and just, trusting that business knowledge that you've grown over your career that got you to that role in the first place. And then, working with those who got the balance on the HR view to then articulate things forward. And, my advice is also to start relatively simple, like relatively straightforward. Diversity, if you trust your program and you're committed to your program and you've got, decent numbers and those numbers are going to improve, that's a good place. Learning and development. Like again, I've lost count of the number of organizations that are talking about future of work, digital transformation, pivoting from these jobs are going away, these jobs are coming, how are my people going to be ready? We know them, we've done them, some of us has done them several times through our career, and that's the kind of thing that is material to the business, and the things we're working on are the things to share, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. So when is there like a deadline for this?
Yes.
Well, how does it work?
So how it works is the SEC announced the rule change. It becomes effective 30 days after that rule change. And then you have to comply, or you have to align with that regulation at your next reporting window. It was announced on August 26th. It became the regulation. It became the regulation in action on November 9th. Every business that reports to the SEC, their next reporting window, again, often that is an end of December timeframe. That's when it's in effect. Again, you can report nothing. You likely get a buy on the first one because nobody knows about it, so nobody's paying attention.
Clearly, no one's paying attention, and maybe it's just I'm speaking to the wrong people every day. But
no, because I've been wandering around like, is anybody else worried about this? Because we went out to our customers clearly to say, this just happened. Do you know? And again, classic spectrum. A lot of them did. The ones that we would expect to did, and then others are like, "Oh no, thanks for letting us know." So it's sort of slowly rolling through the field and the practice. I think your show is going to do a massive amount to accelerate that.
Yeah,
so
we should ask now, shouldn't we? If anyone's listening right now, leave a comment in the chat if this is the first time that you've come across this.
Yeah,
I'll be interested to hear the feedback from everyone.
It would be a pretty
well.
accurate reflection.
There may be some people in the chat going, I've got 20 days left to make this happen. I'm going to be giving Ian a call at this point. Based on the people that you've spoken to, I know a lot of them are customers, but you have a huge external network. Are organizations prepared? And do they have the data in general? Or are you seeing that the vast majority of companies don't have the data sets, are so far behind that this is going to be quite a big change and transformation?
I would say, like, across the spectrum of the HR industry, people are not prepared. Like, there is a portion, Sapient Insights do a nice annual survey on HR tech. 90% of the respondents were doing analytics in Excel.
Still, that
basically just says you are really, it's going to hurt. I have no simple way to say that other than it's going to hurt. There's a higher, somewhere around 30% who've got a people analytics team, who've got the data, who've got their process in place. And so, they have people with the mindset, they've been in their data long enough, they've seen the patterns in their organization, they can align, people analytics practice is about business results. So they've already been pursuing that, like, how do we shape what the business does? So they've got that knowledge base in place, but the rest who are wrestling with getting a headcount report out or distributing lists of starts and exits on a monthly basis, they'll need to accelerate the frequency with which they get data. They'll need to make decisions about how do we get that expertise in and around our business? Do we stand up our own team? Do we rent it from somebody else? The other key piece from a lot of our practitioners is that there is an SEC reporting group. If you have SEC disclosure requirements, you have a group in your business that's doing that. This will be on their radar if nobody else's. So making sure you've made that connection, because who knows, they
Probably
may be
reach out to the finance team as well, right?
they may be off deciding what they're going to report.
Yeah, exactly. Probably a good idea to speak with your CFO.
Which we have actually no resemblance to what you're doing in HR. And as the CHRO is like, oh, well, this was in your SEC disclosure. Can you talk about this? It's like, it was? I had no idea.
Yeah. And I'm sure that's going to happen a lot more. We're laughing about it, but I'm sure that's probably going to happen a lot more than we think.
Yeah, I sincerely hope not, but I do think it's a possibility. Again, reasons for spreading this information so that people can start to form, because it's a, if I think about it, it's a completely new set of connectivity that HR hasn't had before, and so that's where often these changes are hard. Is like, well, we've rarely been in these conversations. So,
you released a really good report, didn't you, Ian? Or an article?
Yeah, there's an article. The Visier blog is called Clarity, and as you said, Chris, to be really clear, so few people are talking about it. If you put like SEC plus disclosure plus CHRO into Google, you'll find the article. Like there's 4 of them out there in the world. So
wow. All right. Well, we're probably, like most things, like it's going to get to the point where it's almost too late, and then everyone's going to jump on it and start researching it, and there's going to do sort of this scramble. But as you said, there may be some companies thinking, we'll be okay, but then they're the ones that when they hit with those moments where they, something goes wrong, you're gonna wish you invested the time to do it right.
And again, it's a change. There's a bunch of people learning their way in, so I don't know that we're going to go wrong on I don't want to call sort of the sky is falling, but it's not something you can wait on. Like, you need to start working out who owns it, who in your group has got the background and thought process to work on it. Like, how do you build the connections? How do you get these pieces flowing? And the key is to build it off the data. And as I said, it's not about, let's just take a bunch of snapshots and look at what's happening month to month. Like, you have to build out the trends. You have to look at the patterns. You actually have to get your data in that kind of shape, because then the things that you can report start to become really clear. Give you another simple example. Talking to one of the folks that we work with, CEO is making a statement about their diversity targets. Like, we will. Mm-hmm. What he had spent the couple of days working on was like, I need to understand the movement in my organization such that when the CEO says we will hit X%, I've got confidence that we can get there. It's not it's not a plucked out of the air number. It's not some aspirational number. It's based on data. It's based on the trajectory of growth and the levers that we know we can pull to change that growth. That he found out some really interesting stuff, which was they were super diverse in the base layers and the kind of the entry level individual contributor roles. They weren't seeing the kind of growth up through the business that they needed. And so, like, that whole quest of the CEO to put out a number, his analysis to work out how are we going to get there, basically created a program that said we need to make it more straightforward for everybody to move up through the organization and to be active in creating team lead roles, manager roles, director roles, so that diverse individuals actually follow up the organization, because becomes this self-fulfilling prophecy. It becomes a virtuous cycle. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, for me, it's that fantastic use of data where somebody has an aspiration, somebody does a great analysis, we learn something about the behavior of the business that changes what the business does, that gets CEO support, like all the way down through, that actually makes the business better for everyone. Like, for me, it's this real win-win. So I really support this drive. I don't see it as a big brother-ish thing. I actually just think it's going to elevate practice. And again, it was a really cool example for me of like, how does this stuff start to really drive improvements?
In many ways, companies are already doing this now. This work that you're talking about, it's just a different lens of how they're going to then report it to the FCC. Yeah. So it's not a huge shift. You're not having to start doing all these new things that you weren't doing before. You should be doing a lot of this, and I'm sure it will drive more work and more attention on are we doing the right things that are adding value to our business, customers, stakeholders, employees, etc. But now we're having to not having to, but report it.
Well, there's nothing like having to write a report to focus effort.
No, that's what I was getting at. Exactly. So now there's nothing like that to put your attention on it fully and make sure you're going in the right direction. But look, thanks so much. I really appreciate you taking the time to join us and educate me and everyone else out there as well. And this is one of the reasons why we do this show as well. So I really appreciate that. Before we let you go, if there's kind of one parting thing you want people to take away from this, what would that be? And then secondly, where can people connect with you and reach out if they want to say hello?
So, I mean, the one thing is don't wait for somebody else to tell you what is correct. You have to start answering that question for yourself. You need to understand what you're going to disclose to the SEC for your business. It won't necessarily be the same as everybody else's. So, don't wait to follow others. You've got to get on top of this. And then I'm on the best place to find me is LinkedIn. One of the things I do on LinkedIn is run a debate on Thursdays around people analytics practices. So if you're curious on the different ways in which people analytics is developing, then connect with me on LinkedIn.
That's interesting. So you do it. You do a post, and then
it's a post. It's called the Thursday debate. It's from my account, and I'll put out two examples of things that are going on. Is like, is it more important to interpret the data, or is it more important to build the data? Is it easier to run security, or is it easier to maintain hierarchies? Like, again, some of it's quite technical in PA, and then when people analytics other pieces, we get into the use of the data. So if you're interested in people analytics, it's a fun way to see the different views across the practice.
I'll definitely check it out.
Awesome.
And thanks for everyone for tuning in and joining us, whether you're on LinkedIn, YouTube, wherever you are. I think we're streaming everywhere these days. So wherever you are, thank you for tuning in. We'll be back at the same time tomorrow. So we'll see you then. But thanks again, Ian. And we'll look forward to seeing you again soon. All right. See you later.
Thanks,
Bye.
Chris. Take care. Cheers.